He was skilled just in asking for things all the time, for if any bhikkhu becomes extravagantly minded, with many wants and desires, and he goes about searching for personal wealth, he will be like this in everything, having no shame in what he is doing. He just has the intention and the fixed aim of getting money, saying, "Please give me that." In fact, his meditation practice is the repetition of "please give me that" and nothing else. He has no need of reciting the chants or meditating by holding in mind a word or a long saying like all the others who practice meditation. He has just this one saying, which has caused enough disturbance in the world already. If he goes on doing this much more, it will surely break up the world. Venerable Ajaan asked him, "Do you want that short saying? It will bring you the path and fruition easily in a way that none of the Sāvakas ever attained to." "No, I don't want it, because it is a saying which destroys both the religion and people." "If you don't want it, then why are you asking for me to behave like a monkey? For this saying is one that has come from nowhere but the monkeys, having been adapted for us in this short saying." "Please forgive me for putting forward my wrong ideas. I did so because I thought that it would be more convenient and comfortable for Venerable Ajaan, without it being harmful to you or to the practice of Dhamma in the Sasana. If I had thought that it was in line with the way of the monkeys, which are such careless, conceited animals, as Venerable Ajaan has explained, I should not have said anything, because I had no intention of doing any harm in making this request to Venerable Ajaan." Venerable Ajaan replied, "Even though you did not think of going in that direction, yet what you asked me to do pointed quite clearly in that direction. There is no need for us to go about asking or telling others to follow suit in everything they do. It is enough for us to see and hear the things which are happening all the time right in front of us, for they are the things that teach us quite well enough for us to be able to hold them in mind as examples. Those things which can make people good or bad are to be found almost everywhere, and there is no need to go to college to learn how to pick them up. The good things turn those who take them up and practice them into good people who can progress and develop, whereas the bad things lead those who do them to deterioration and ruin, and there is no need to broadcast and advertise this to make people believe that this happens. For example, a person or family which tends to be wasteful and thriftless will also tend to cause the same characteristics in other members of the family, until the whole family becomes wasteful and thriftless. Then whatever income they get is never enough to cover what they spend, because each member of the family has become addicted to spending money in the same way, and none of them have any interest in being economical or saving. Even the water in a canal can be dried up when it flows away without stopping. Let us compare one family that practices economy and looks after their wealth, spending with reason as their guiding principle, against another family who are wasteful and thriftless and have the tendency of spending without restraint, and let us see which one of them has more peace and contentment, and which has more trouble and worry. I can say for sure that a family which has principles has security. They will have much more contentment and happiness in their own family circle and in their relations with the rest of the world than the family which has a disease for which there is no remedy and no doctor to cure it. In other words, the disease of having no restraint in spending and no ability to save. But quite apart from the happiness and contentment for themselves and their family, there is the question of bringing up their own children, and the way they influence other children and people who are associated with them, and how they should turn them into good people who have a good name and restraint in their behavior, and in their use of the requisites of living of all kinds, including the care and protection of their various forms of wealth, so that it may act as a firm foundation for them for a long time into the future. As for those people and families who have no self-control or moderation in looking after themselves, not only will they be anxious and troubled in the present, but they are likely to influence their children and relatives in the same way, causing disruption and disrepute in their family, relatives, and friends for a long time to come. I have never seen anyone who is without a guiding principle in his heart yet who keeps his property and wealth intact and in good order, but I have often seen how such a person goes to loss and ruin, how his debts and mortgages load him down and ruin him until he has nothing left that he can call his own. From where can such a person establish anything to make a well-based recovery which people could admire? If people have nothing to force their minds, as well as their bodies and speech, to behave as they should, nor enough restraint to weigh up the situation when their many emotional impulses, arammana, arise in their minds, as is bound to happen with everyone, they will be quite unable to control themselves and to avoid being submerged by them, even though they may be intelligent and highly educated. This is because they have acted in those ways of self-destruction, such as I have already mentioned. They are neither good nor praiseworthy, and those sages who are truly wise are most careful to avoid them, more so than anything else which may cause them harm, whether from the actions of other people or things. At the same time, such wise people try to maintain themselves in the ways of virtue the whole time, never yielding and letting themselves go in whatever way their impulses and circumstances suggest, unlike those cases which we can see for ourselves who are in a pitiful, miserable state, and there are many more of them than there are of people who are worthy of respect and admiration. Even worse are those who like to have various traits of character and then act out their characteristics, making out that these are what they are, keeping up with the latest trends and fashions, without ever thinking whether they are of any real value, or whether there is any penalty in doing such things before they do them. Such people just happen to see or hear these things by chance, and they are all set ready to grasp them quickly and take them up and act them out, and then to make out that they are big or important or wealthy, whatever accords with their conceit, which is just how the monkeys act. They can write out their own death warrant in full, but there is no doubt that they will only be able to jump a few steps before falling into the chasm followed by a swarm of flies. In saying this, I am not doing so for the purpose of blaming the world, or any particular person or group, but I am saying it because it is the truth, which may be seen and known clearly with one's eyes and heart within the affairs of us human beings. Nobody can rightly deny that if anyone acts and behaves in the way I have described, they will go to ruin, and it's a one-way street. In other words, they have signed their own receipt and their own death warrant, even while they still talk big, bragging about how clever and well-informed they are, what a good background they come from, with plenty of money, counted in millions which they have made for themselves, although nobody knows where it could have come from. But their destruction takes place so easily, like someone who keeps untold wealth in his own house. It only needs his house to catch fire for all of it to be destroyed within 1 or 2 hours, and all he has left is a lot of ashes. I have endeavored to learn and practice the Dhamma of the Lord Buddha from the time I was ordained up to the present time, which is many years now, and the more I have learned and practiced this way, the more I have come to see my own stupidity. Instead of becoming clever and gaining strange and unusual knowledge to contradict the Dhamma of the Lord, saying that it is untrue, that it is not well-taught Dhamma, Svakata Dhamma, and not the Dhamma which leads to liberation, Niyanika Dhamma, as it is claimed in some texts and by some people, whatever the level of Dhamma and in whatever aspect, the more I have practiced it, the more faith I have gained in it, causing me to accept it all completely. I have no knowledge which makes me feel confident that I could boast and say that I can contradict the Dhamma of the Lord. In every part of all the books of the Tipitaka, there is nothing but the Lord giving teaching about the stupidity of people and other beings who make the boast that they are so skilled and clever in what they know, yet they cannot even compete with a frightened monkey which is looking for a way to hide from people. If you say that people such as ourselves are more clever than the monkeys, we must know what things are dangerous and harmful to us, and keep away from them, and diminish their hold over us, and we must not be reckless and over-self-confident about these things. Wherever I look, I see only people bragging about how clever they are at doing evil things which are harmful both to themselves and everyone else. Nobody seems to be clever and wise enough to be able to avoid and get away from these blameworthy things so as not to become intimate with them and to turn them into close companions all the time by day and night and in all activities, for this makes them become ever more firmly embedded so that they will never be able to get away from them enough to look into their hearts and see Dhamma there, which can then flow out into bodily actions and speech to give them some peace. Have you ever thought about how subtle and profound is the Dhamma teaching, the Sasana Dhamma of the Lord Buddha? As far as most of us are concerned, we can only use our hearts which are full of dirty, filthy kilesas to fathom out the Dhamma of the Lord, and all we get is blaming and criticizing arising within us, saying, Dhamma is difficult to practice, and those who practice Dhamma must go against the way of the world if they are going to practice at all. The Lord Buddha taught Dhamma, but it seems to me that it does not accord with the true nature of the world. For the teaching says that if one does good, one gets good. If one does evil, one gets evil. But I have done good until I have almost died, yet I don't see any good from it at all. But there are plenty of other people who don't seem to have done good in any way, yet they are rich millionaires with vast wealth who have gone far beyond me, while I have been doing good all the time. So I don't see how the Dhamma can be true as it has been taught. And again, if there is any truth in it about evil, why does it appear that those who do evil seem to get away with it, whereas in times of necessity, those who have done good don't seem to be helped by the merit they have made? So there are probably no such things as good and evil, nor hell, heaven, and nibbana, for if there are, where are they? Those people who have died, both good and evil, just disappear, and never seem to come back to tell us about it, or to let us know enough so that we may feel confident and desire to make merit, to give dana, to guard our morality, and to practice meditation, so that when we die we can all go to heaven and nibbana. These are the kind of things which are attached to our hearts, and which arise when we try to penetrate the Dhamma of the Lord Buddha, because the world likes this kind of thing. But doing it in this way, there is no hope of acquiring and firmly establishing those good things which are portrayed in Dhamma, because the kilesas don't care for Dhamma. They just care for the kilesas and nothing else. So all that is acquired is more filthy kilesas. The Dhamma was never taught for those people who are just waiting, ready to contradict and destroy Dhamma by using various kinds of thoughts and views. But it was taught for those people who search for the proof of the truth as derived from the true Dhamma. Therefore it is not the Dhamma of complaining, of guesswork or speculation, like that of most of us who look deeply into Dhamma with a heart that is unclean, and then reach down and draw up a lot of filth which we snip at and lay the blame on Dhamma with a lack of sincerity, after which the heart, based on that ground, says, I can think and speak quite freely, but it doesn't know that the odor which it smells is its own filth, and there isn't any Dhamma which they can blame anywhere near it. However much people blame and find fault with Dhamma causes no disturbance to Dhamma at all. All that happens is that they will get back a lot of disturbance in themselves, which comes from their own thoughts and speech, even as they think with self-satisfaction how we are privileged because we can dispute and criticize Dhamma with a clear conscience. Dhamma is very precise and subtle, and it is difficult for those hearts which have kilesas, such as ours and yours, to penetrate and reach it, as we have already explained above. Therefore, although your intention was good in making this request of me, it also brought up an important aspect of Dhamma concealed within it. For thriftiness, economy, contentment, and satisfaction with little are all factors of mind, Dhamma, which mean the same thing as being careful and not forgetting oneself. And those who practice these Dhammas are sure to be able to conduct and look after themselves in a way that is admirable, regardless of whether they are ordained members of the Sangha or lay people. A bhikkhu, even though he has the greatest of good fortune with large numbers of people who have faith in him and praise him, or alternatively, a lay person who is more or less wealthy, if they are not full of pride and vanity, nor easily forget themselves in their good fortune, they can still turn their external wealth to good use in a way that depends on the basic nature of this wealth. Then it can promote the happiness and contentment of the owner, as well as bringing honors to him. His wealth thus acts like a true friend who is always there, ready to stand by him in times of suffering and great necessity. It does not then become an enemy, an agent which harms him and spoils him, which is so often the case amongst those who are careless and thoughtless, and never mend their ways enough to have some peace, calm, and gracefulness. Those who are under the influence of these Dhamma virtues and have them as part of their natures are the kind of people who are looked upon as being gracious and dignified by all normal people. They differ greatly from those who like to put on contrived airs and display fashions and fancies that excite the kilesas, making normal people feel dizzy and off balance when they see them. As for those people who do these things, they think that they are beautiful and splendid, like devatas up in the sky and undoubtedly superior to all others. But when normal people see them, they just get a headache and feel upset and off balance. You should think about these two forms of behavior by comparing them so as to get to know them. In what ways do they differ from each other? Compare these two opposing Dhammas with what I have already talked about above, and to make it clear I shall give a brief explanation of what is meant by being provident, being economical, being contented, santosa, and wanting of little. Please listen carefully. Providence, or being provident, means that a person takes an interest in and looks after all his valuable and useful possessions, not letting them go to rack and ruin due to a careless lack of interest, and not acting like a wasteful spendthrift. When he makes use of them, he is careful not to spoil them when there is no need for it, so that they are not wasted. For each one of these things, whatever its nature, has come to him by working for it, or by searching for it. It didn't come on its own such that he can afford to look on it as being of little value. Being economical is what comes from the heart of a person who is fond of and pays attention to the things he uses, and who looks after those things which are of value to him by being careful with them. He doesn't use them and then throw them down anywhere in a careless manner, but puts them away carefully and properly after having used them. He is not extravagant in his living and spending, yet he does not make out that he is hard up while he still has enough goods and wealth to live reasonably well. Nor does he forget himself when he has plenty of wealth, but he tries to turn that wealth to good advantage in whatever way is suitable according to the nature of his wealth. He is not miserly and tight-fisted, but gives support and charity in the same way as others do. Or maybe he gives a lot more when there is a valid reason for it, because the practice of being provident and economical are the ways of behavior, Dhamma, of those wise ones who always act with reason in regard to themselves and all those things which they become associated with everywhere round about them. Therefore, such a person who is provident and economical does not tend to go in any direction which would make him open to blame or criticism, but instead his way of doing things brings him nothing but praise and admiration. A person who is provident and economical is also one who looks carefully at all aspects of social intercourse, business, and whatever else he deals with. He is not easily caught out by enticing things which enter the doors of the senses and stir up the kilesas, and he practices self-restraint and patience with the changing, unstable, underlying falsehoods in the world of society, by means of shrewd judgment, vicārñāñāna. He does not easily get excited about false, deceptive, and scary things which catch the attention, but he is well contented, santosa, and satisfied with whatever wealth he has, and does not like going about wild with excitement, jumping into this and colliding with that, under the influence of a heart that is brimful of raga tanha, but he acts towards everything in an even-handed, consistent way. I will give you examples from lay life to illustrate the value of those principles of Dhamma and how necessary they are to the hearts of people in the world. Thus, people who are married have each other as a constant and valuable possession, and they should be glad and contented with it, not letting their minds go wild, jumping about all over the place and wandering out to fall in love with other people's husbands and wives, or other people down the street, in disregard of the Dhamma of contentment. In other words, being husband and wife to each other respectively is a long-standing and valuable possession that both of them have. So even though they may be attracted to others to some extent, which is the characteristic way of ordinary people, Paṭipadā, who like to pick on anything as it suits their fancy and are never satisfied, the Dhamma of contentment must firmly force them to withstand these parasitic emotional attractions, aramana, all the time. It must not allow their minds and bodies to go out to such things, bringing them home so that they get involved in their valuable and long-standing possessions. For these things will become enemies in their town, their home, or between husband and wife, causing the breakup of their family and the dissipation of their valuable possessions until all is lost. Close friends will become strangers, and the happiness which overshadowed them due to the Dhamma of contentment which was protecting them will break up and dissolve into nothing. In order that the Dhamma of contentment shall be fundamental in one's life and heart, one must not be interested or concerned with anything other than one's own existing possessions which belong to one. For even though there is greater wealth out there which does not belong to one, one should not make it any concern of one's own, for one has got rid of most of the greed and covetousness that wants to get what belongs to others. Then oneself and one's family will be happy throughout, and there will be no break-up in one's family, because they all gladly accept the limiting bounds within which they live. Husband, wife, and their children will also have some peace and happiness and a feeling of confidence in each other, without having any doubts or suspicions to cause trouble. They will feel quite confident that their possessions and things of value are truly their own, without any of them being like parasites which go about twisting and altering everything. For there will be just their whole family unit, and their possessions will be entirely their own, so that each and all of them will feel well disposed and peaceful, because the Dhamma of contentment protects and looks after the stability of oneself and one's family, so that they may have value and worth in their hearts. As for wanting of little, this is a form of Dhamma which is much more subtle than contentment. But both of them are a pair of Dhamma factors which should grace each family, and young men and women in particular, who should keep their behavior within the bounds of what is proper. In other words, a young man and woman who love each other should keep it that way, without having any others hanging on in their hearts which can cause their marriage partner to feel upset, slighted, and inferior, with thoughts such as, "Let him or her go to that other one. I don't see any point keeping this up, for it will only be a tiresome lot of trouble to remain faithful any longer." For when two people love each other, it must remain each other, without involving a third party, whether man or woman, and they must remain faithful to each other from when they first come together right through to the end of their lives, without getting excited about anyone but their own partner. Each of them only loves the one person, and their hearts should be joined together in harmony to the end of their lives. Any others who just wait to break up their close relationship they should look upon as being parasites. If two people truly live together as a husband and wife to each other, and that is all, even though a devata, an angel, should come along, they would not become intimate with it, because it is not theirs, and not what they truly value, for they only feel happy and confident with each other. Anything more than this is not being satisfied with little amongst those who want peace and happiness in their family, which both husband and wife can view with full confidence. When we have considered the meaning of being provident, of economy, of contentment, and wanting little, we should also consider their opposites for comparison. Then we shall see the full significance of both sides, and how valuable and worthy, or baneful and disreputable they are, respectively. Then anyone who values reason and truth may be led to examine them, and choose and practice whichever of them he finds suitable. Thus, conceit, pride, and vanity in goods and emotional attachments, being wasteful and extravagant, having one, then thinking that one would like to have two, then three, not being satisfied in what one has already got, and wanting plenty in everything, all of this is an enemy to oneself and others, and all of these things are enemies of Dhamma. Going in opposition to Dhamma, such as being improvident, is a way which leads only to deterioration and loss. Even if someone wants peace, happiness, and development, they are not likely to get it by destroying Dhamma in this way, simply because it is the wrong way. With either a bhikkhu or a layperson, if they go the wrong way, it is bound to lead them to deterioration and distress, because Dhamma is the center line of the road, along which one must go for gain and increase. This is true both for those who are ordained as well as lay people, and even though there are some differences between the two, they are not much, and generally speaking these things, such as being satisfied and wanting little, are the same for all. It is just that bhikkhus go the way of bhikkhus, and lay people act in the ways of lay people. In both cases, the results should be those of peace and happiness, which accord with the causes or actions which people do. The Sāvakas, in the time of the Lord Buddha, who are Sanghang Saranang Gacchāmi, our refuge, in most cases practiced the way of contentment with what they had got and satisfaction with little. Their fear and concern about privations, difficulties, and survival was much less than their fear of not knowing and seeing Dhamma. Because they were afraid that they may not come to know and see Dhamma, they tried hard to make the greatest efforts and put everything they had got into their striving to know and to see, and therefore they came to know and to see Dhamma to their heart's content. But as for ourselves, we are only afraid of poverty and privations, afraid that it will be difficult and tormenting, and afraid that we may die. If anything is lacking, we can't stand it. We feel depressed, deficient, and sorry, and we can't get down to making the effort to practice the way. In our hearts there is nothing but kilesas and the fear of death all the time and everywhere, and Dhamma cannot get down into this state because the kilesas bar the way, and there is no path for it to penetrate and get in. Wherever we go or stay, if there are lay people, relatives, and friends who come round with faith, followed up by large food carriers and many dishes of food with plenty of sweet and savory things, our hearts are happy and contented because they are made fresh and cool by food. We smile and applaud with contentment, saying, "The atmosphere is very good here. It is fine and clear and has a good feel about it. So my meditation practice goes well and comfortably without my having to force it against the grain, and I am steadily becoming more and more calm." But what is the truth? Is his meditation really going well, or is he finding comfort in lying down and sleeping? It is not easy to be sure for a bhikkhu who likes this kind of atmosphere, because being able to eat a lot, lying down, and sleeping well and much all go together as inseparable states. I once did this sort of thing, so I know about it well. If one then goes to a place which is really suitable for meditation, due to its being free from disturbing things, but lacking in atmosphere, meaning little food because there are no large food carriers walking behind, then one's atmospheric mood finds it difficult. One can't put up with it. One complains to the lay people, saying, "Oh, how difficult the atmosphere in this place is. I cannot stand it here. It's too oppressive, and I can't breathe freely. So I can't get calm in meditation, and my heart, my citta, is difficult to control. This is quite different from what I am used to, and I cannot stand this atmosphere which is so heavy and oppressive, and I must say farewell to you, good lay people, and leave today." So one gets out quickly to find a place where the atmosphere is good and suitable so that one can do one's meditation practice. There! What do you think of that? What do you think of a Tuṭanga Kammaṭṭhāna bhikkhu whose meditation is influenced by the atmosphere, and whose citta goes down into calm when the atmosphere is good? But as soon as the food carriers are not immediately evident, the atmosphere becomes oppressive, and his citta will not become calm in meditation. Supposing that all sorts of things become deficient or unavailable altogether, what will the atmosphere be like then? I think he would soon die because there wouldn't be any atmosphere left to breathe. But what do you think about this Kammaṭṭhāna atmosphere? Do you like it? I think it's remarkable. If you want to see the real Tathagata and the real Arahants in a way that is quite clear and obvious to your heart, without any restriction and limitation due to time and place, you must look into and examine these questions of deficiency and lack, as well as plenty of all those things you need and use, so as to see that such conditions are normal, and to see that you should depend on these things only to the extent that they are an aid in penetrating and reaching the intended purpose. But you should not be emotionally involved, arammana, with any of them more than you are with Dhamma, which is the intended purpose, the goal of your endeavors. Contentment and the wanting of little is the way that all the noble followers of the Buddha went, whereas extravagance and wanting plenty is the way of the atmosphere Kammaṭṭhāna bhikkhus which I have described above, and they will never be able to get free from dukkha while their hearts are firmly attached to those things.